increasingly warm welcome, I think, to our short presentation on engaging hearts and minds at John Lewis and Waitrose. So I guess you'll all be really familiar with the names. Maybe today you'll learn a little bit about the secrets behind what has made them. I'm Sharon Mbow, and I am one of the programme directors at Read Learning. Stand just at the back, very conveniently placed, number 57. And I'm here today with Ginny Powlson and Carol Easton. Maybe Ginny, Carol, you'd like to do a quick introduction.
Hello, we're delighted to be here as a double act. I'm Ginny. I work in the John Lewis division as a design lead, responsible for leading a team of designers mainly looking at soft skills and leadership design.
Hi, I'm Carol Easton. I'm sort of ditto, but I do the same in Waitrose, and our emphasis will probably be on the food side.
If you do feel there's an inordinately large gap between people who are presenting together, it's purely so that we're not in the glare of the slide. It just makes it a bit easier for us and for you to see us. So, the aim of the session. There are a number of things I think that we wanted to get across between us. Firstly, to tell a story about collaboration and also about some of the pitfalls of making assumptions about things. Secondly, to share the value of having really well-defined roles when you work on extremely large projects. We also want to highlight the value of partnership, not just in this sense, but also in partnerships that you work with other people, and how that can sometimes provide a different source of innovation and take you into new territories. Also, we'd like to give you an inside view of what goes on behind the scenes of some, some good names. And lastly, just to hear about some of the successes that have come out of the programme that Read and John Lewis Partnership have worked on. I think first, I'll let those go on. I think first, actually, Carol, it would be really good, maybe if you could put into context the size of the organisation that we're dealing with.
We're 4 divisions, so you've got the John Lewis side, the Waitrose side, a corporate function, and a new division called Partnership Services that sort of sits in the middle and does everything on behalf of both. We don't just sell product, we have farms, we have manufacturing, we have furnishing, we've even got hotels and leisure for ourselves. So we're a massive sort of organisation that you probably only see the front part on the high street, but there's a huge amount that goes on behind. And I think we 86,000 of us, and we don't call ourselves staff, we're partners. So we're spread across the country, and we've even ventured into Jersey and Guernsey, so there's lots of us all over the place.
Lovely, thank you. Now, I believe the project that we're going to talk to you about today was born out of a restructure. Ginny, could you first just give us a small explanation about this new structure, if you like?
Sure, so I won't bore you with the details of our restructure, except to say that we have entirely restructured our HR function over the last 18 months and are still on a journey to complete that. But what it's meant for Carol and I is the creation of 2 sister teams of L&D professionals, one sitting in the Waitrose division in Bracknell head office and one sitting in the John Lewis division in Victoria. So the project has involved upskilling and refocusing 90 learning and development professionals, which is not something to be undertaken lightly, I warn you, with trying to do an L&D proposition for a bunch of L&D people has not been without its challenges.
Okay, so to be clear then, what we're dealing with in the restructure is all about L&D. The project is focused all around partners who are in the learning development teams. Okay, I believe you have a number of key roles in that area. Do you just want to explain what those key roles are?
Sure, yes. So our L&D function is structured into 4 chunks. So Carol and I sit in the design chunk. We have account managers that face out to the business partners. We have our own internal deliverers, and we have a small talent function as well that sits in both sister teams. And production, as Carol says, to look at the graphic design of our materials. So our proposition that we're talking about today was for all of those people.
Lovely, thank you. So with such a large, I mean a huge target audience potentially, and you're across what are two quite different businesses actually, the food side for Waitrose and then department store John Lewis, let alone the other production processes. I mean, how do you set yourself up with a really great chance of winning hearts and minds when you're doing something like this?
I think it's all about actually being quite honest with each other and not being precious and that whole get over yourself. Because we realised it was a scary project in trying to take learning and development professionals through a learning process, because they all look at you and go, I could have done that better. So it was all about working together from the start in terms of who do what your role was, what your responsibility was, and keeping in contact and considering the geographical spread. I don't think I've ever done so much telephone conferencing in my life. You know, it was about us working together from the very beginning and being really determined to stick together no matter what.
This point about, you know, talk L&D and people thinking that they actually know what they're doing already. So if you have got such a large L&D group of people, and I mean, I guess you could have written something like this yourself, delivered it internally. Why would you choose to work with somebody external to that? Why would you choose to work with Reed on some of these things?
So our vision for this particular project, we have a bunch of really good L&D professionals, but we've homegrown quite a few of them, and our vision was to really give them an outwards focus, help them be more commercially aligned. And the beauty of working with a supplier such as Reed is that Reed have a bunch of contacts that are already in that space, could leverage a lot of the stuff that they already had, and to be honest, sometimes be impartial, because everyone has an opinion about an L&D offer. Carol and I are very opinionated anyway, and sometimes we needed somebody just to help us stand back and see what we really needed to achieve.
Okay, so were you challenged? Did you find you were thinking in a different way than you might have thought before?
Absolutely. I think we had a view on what we thought we wanted, but it was brilliant to have somebody else externally say, and what about? And it's those sorts of things that sort of, oh yeah, hadn't really, that took us down some slightly different paths. And because they're not part of our organisation, they don't feel precious about what's going on. It just literally got us to think differently.
Okay, thank you. So, Ginny, can you describe the process then, maybe, that you went through with Reed, the external supplier, because this is of course a bit different for you. So tell us what went on to enable you to get to the programme that you've got now.
So we went through a pretty rigorous recruitment and procurement process to end up with our partners with Reed. And from the very beginning it was important to us that our own learners felt involved and an ownership of the programme. So one of the key wins for us, which we wanted to share with you, was really involving them in the design and helping Reed understand us as an organisation, which has been a big win. As I'm sure you have, we have lots of jargon, so some of the simple things we did was to come up with a jargon sheet for Reed so that the deliverers really sound like they're talking our language. We had an internal panel of people from across our teams to be able to talk to Reed about their roles and really help them understand what we did. And I would say it's definitely worth time investing in that. So Carol, you want to add any more to that one?
Maybe, Carol, then you could just talk to us about some of the elements of the programme, because I know there were some things that you've embarked on that you haven't tried before, and that sort of led you off in different directions. So maybe, Carol, you could talk to us about that.
One of the things that was important to us was how to keep it alive, because it's spread over several months and it's modular. So it was around how do we keep people on track, engaged, taking it back, embedding it, and actually getting a return on that investment. So we've used WebEx, which for us is quite new, probably not for you, and it was about having little virtual regroups throughout, which we host and take them through what have you done since, what are you doing to prepare yourself for the next one, what challenges have you faced, all those sorts of things, but using technology in a different way. That in itself presented challenges because we've got different IT structures, we've got different platforms to read, so overcoming that, and we were determined to do it, was the first battle. But once in, I think people have really run at it now, they've got used to it, haven't they? And embraced the whole sense of community and working collaboratively in a way that we hadn't done before.
Okay. So, the media headlines, actually, I mean, I'm sure we all hear and see in the media, you know, very positive things about John Lewis, but I'm sure, and Waitrose, but I'm sure behind that there must be challenges, there must be highs and lows, so that what you see on the high street is just a sort of glowing reflection. Talk to us about the challenges, what really goes on behind the scenes so that you get this great, you know, product or output.
I think the biggest challenge is probably about time and space and place, because two divisions, one based in London, one in Bracknell, and heads of who we needed to get approval from, meant that it added a layer, if you like, of complexity. So it got to the point where I think Ginny and I were saying, right, we're going to go and speak to our head of, get approval, on your marks, get set, phone me back when you're done. Because otherwise things just slip, because it wasn't as high on their radar agenda as it was on ours. So it was more about, I think, being very pragmatic and detailed in how we were going to get things done to make it happen. What else do we have to do?
I would also perhaps share with you, I suspect there's a perception that all behind the scenes in JLP is lovely, which mostly it is, thankfully, because we've both had long careers in JLP, but sometimes the divisions see things extremely differently. And one thing that we both really related to was our learners tend to learn quite differently, so trying to come up with a shared proposition for two different divisions was challenging. So, for example, the Waitrose guys tend to like things very speedy, they're on their feet a lot in their learning, whereas the JL lot traditionally a lot more reflective and want to contemplate a bit of theory and then apply it. So to try and come up with a learning proposition that met all of the learning styles, particularly poignant for us with two different cultures and two different divisions. So that we'd spent a lot of time thinking about the design, trying things, had a lot of feedback, as you can imagine, from our L&D colleagues who were all having an L&D proposition for them.
Was there a point where you got personally involved? Because, of course, you're part of the team and you've led the project, but how do you know how it feels for them? Was there a point where you've engaged?
We've been on all of the learning modules ourselves, so I think the best one I've attended was with one of the teams that report into both of us, just to hear what their thoughts are, rather than going with a leadership group who it's not designed for them and they've got a very strong view on what should work and what shouldn't work. But I think that was the thing for us, was to keep the learner in mind throughout this, and it wasn't about our learning need as such. So we've gone through our own learning with them.
Bit tough, that? Because of course we know all of us learners.
No, it's been great. It's been a really good opportunity, and to work with the guys from John Lewis and work collaboratively in that way. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Did you?
Good. Thank you. Okay. Now, I know you're still part way through that. It's a big programme, isn't it? But are there any signs of success so far? You know, tell us a little bit about what you're celebrating at this stage.
I would say the things that started to trickle out, the leading indicators, if you will, are things like our partners really starting to think outside and what goes on outside JLP, rather than always designing and delivering what we've done before. So they have started to really question how we add value as learning and development, what the best thing is to spend our time on, and also challenging in the right way our stakeholders, who sometimes come with a predefined learning proposition and a sort of to-do list for us, and actually having the skill and the capability to have really meaningful conversations with the stakeholders who are presented to us. Carol, if you want to add anything to that one as well.
About the end game as well, much more focused on return on, to actually prove that the investment in us, because it has been a massive investment in us, has been worth it.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. That may have sparked some thoughts with you. It may have encouraged some questions in your head. If there are any questions, I think now might be the time to take those. So, yes. Should I give you the microphone?
Hi, that was really interesting. I work for an organisation where we do training, and what we're facing at the moment is we want to find out from the people that we train in developing countries how they do things differently now as a result of the training. Can you just feed back to me how you got that information?
Well, that's an interesting one. I would say it's early doors for us because we haven't finished our programme. There's still a chunk of the team to go through it. I think partly it was being clear about what we were looking for at the beginning and thinking about what sorts of things would we like to see coming out and reflecting on those and keeping the team involved in that. So partly the programme has been shaped along the way as we've had feedback from people.
Around asking the question in terms of being overt about it, so what are you doing differently? What would you have done before, or how has this changed your thinking? So my guys are starting to come up with a lot more about the external perspective. I've done more research for myself, I've been on such and such a website. So the stuff they've taken away, and as Ginny said, it's early days, has kind of shown itself. You can see it in a much more visible way.
So what's the yes, how are read tracking, how well this, and what's the framework? In fact, I think it's probably timely if I introduce Tim Stacey. He in fact has been the key person managing the account with John Lewis, so I think it's probably better if you hear with him. Tim, is that okay?
I can, if you can repeat the question.
It's
please,
about how are we measuring the work that we have been doing with John Lewis? What measures or how we might be
Yeah, I mean, to mirror
that?
the earlier answer that Ginny gave to the previous question, it's still early stages within the programme for that part of it. So we're meticulously evaluating every step of the way, and actually what we're trying to achieve as part of this programme is very much an upskilling exercise to make sure that we are encouraging the partners within the partner development community to do a lot of things they already knew really well, but actually put a little bit more structure to it and get a bit more of a consistent approach. And I think, to echo a little bit about what Ginny said earlier, we'll probably start getting a lot of those answers once we've completed the programme and once learning and development initiatives begin to be rolled out within John Lewis and Waitrose, because that way we can understand, well, what's the feedback that we're getting from the business? Is it a more consistent approach than we perhaps had before? And actually we're starting to get more tangible results from the business than perhaps ever came out of it before. It's about that consistency, and it's about making sure we're hearing from the business that that upskilling has taken place. Okay, so again, I think it's probably fair to say that those conversations and that consultancy piece is still ongoing, internally within John Lewis and Waitrose, and also how Read Learning can play a part of that. So we'd love to update you with that. We don't have all those answers just yet. It's still part of the programme that is to be discussed and decided upon, certainly.
Thank you. I think at this stage, if there are other questions, Ginny and Carol will be here. Tim, who's been a really big part, Simon has also worked on it, he's not here today. So if there are questions, of course, come up and talk to us after. But thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Have a great afternoon.